Welcome back, John Hanson.
Thank you. Hey, Krista. Hey, Amy. Yeah, it was a nice week away in Wisconsin, and I am a little tanner and
A
did a
little
lot of
sausage
water
out.
sports, and yeah, a little relaxing.
You're
And
looking sun-kissed, John.
oh, thank you
Did you
very
get out
much.
on the lake?
Yeah, we were out on the lake. It was just really nice to unplug, not only from obviously work, but like everything in the
Life.
world. Boy, to unplug from 2020 for a little bit, but plugging back in, and here we go. We got an interesting weather day in store today. It's going to be kind of a tale of 2 days. Sunshine here downtown, really much sunshine everywhere. And as we take a look at our downtown area, you can see that for the most part, we're looking okay. It looks like the start of a beautiful sunny day, right? Well, everything's going to change around 11 o'clock or noon. That's when clouds are going to roll in, and some pretty heavy showers and storms are going to roll in as well. We're going to get multiple rounds of these storms. So we're anticipating the first wave midday, 11 a.m. to about 2 or 3 p.m. They'll ease off and they'll refire, and it's these evening storms we're worried about. Not necessarily intense in terms of severe. There is a chance for severe weather, but we're looking at torrential downpours possible in localized spots. Some models anticipating upwards of maybe 3 inches in some spots throughout the next 24 hours. We'll wait and see. I think most of us will end up around an inch of rain, but again, it'll be firing on and off throughout the afternoon. It's muggy out there. This atmosphere is charged, it's juiced, it's ready to go, and that's what contributes to it. As we look at the 7-day forecast, we cool down midweek, add a little bit more rain on Wednesday, maybe even tomorrow, but just on and off. And then we get this it's summer. It's officially summer. And this is what you get. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're in the mid to upper 80s. It's muggy, pop-up showers pretty much anytime over the next 7 days. And that's what we want, right?
Yeah, you know what? It's good. I don't have to get outside and water the flowers today.
For sure.
Yeah, it was supposed to rain all weekend too. We got rain Saturday night for a little bit.
Yeah, not bad, right? It's great.
Blame
weekend.
Amy. She was the weather person last week. It wasn't my fault.
It wasn't my fault either.
I know, we can't yell at John today.
Either way, it's weather. You can never really yell at John or me. All right, let's get to some news you need to know this morning. And unfortunately, we're starting off on a very serious note. 102 people were shot in Chicago this weekend, the largest number of shooting victims in a single weekend of this year. Among the 14 killed, 5 of them were kids, including a 3-year-old boy who was shot in the Austin neighborhood riding in the back of his dad's car, and a 13-year-old girl killed in the same neighborhood hours later. One of the most recent shootings was just before 3 this morning, left a 16-year-old girl in East Garfield Park in critical condition. Police are asking anyone with information on these shootings to come forward. A reward has been set up in the 3-year-old's death.
Yeah, and we've got some breaking news from late last night. NASCAR was made aware that a noose was found in the garage stall of Bubba Wallace. So NASCAR, of course, plans to banish whoever is responsible from the sport. They said that we have launched an immediate investigation and we'll do everything we can to identify the persons responsible to eliminate them from the sport. And Wallace, of course, is the league's only Black driver. He recently unveiled a Black Lives Matter car. He backed the belated ban of the Confederate flags. Of course, this story is developing. And I mean, NASCAR was making progress. It breaks your heart to see them get set back by this a little bit, but sounds like the organization is behind this. I mean, there's got to be videos, right, guys?
Well, I mean, in this day and age, you would hope that they find out who's responsible. It's ridiculous that 73 years after Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in baseball, that Black athletes in any sport would have to deal with anything like this. But it is the reality of the world we live in. It just goes to show that even though the movement has progressed quite stunningly over the last month, a lot of work to do. These are uncomfortable conversations to have, but ones that have to happen, unfortunately.
And just to see this happen now, I wonder what he has had to go through in his career as a driver, being the only Black driver. I'm sure he has heard a ton of criticism and racism and comments that he has overcome to stay in the sport as like he has.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and
Go ahead,
people are outraged. People are outraged. I was looking on social media. LeBron came out. Everyone is just, I mean, you hate to see it.
Yeah. It's terrible. Good news today here in Chicago in terms of what's reopening. Officially, the lakefront, although I drove down Lakeshore Drive yesterday and it looked like it was open yesterday, but officially the lakefront trail's opening up, the 606 that runs through the west side of the city, and the harbors are opening up today in Chicago. Great news on the Illinois front in terms of coronavirus cases. They diminished incredibly over the last couple of weeks. We did have another 600 so cases yesterday, but it was the first time really since this pandemic ramped up that all 4 regions of the state were under that 5% positivity threshold, which just seemed impossible 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago. It means that we're on pace as a state to reopen in all 4 phases by Friday, which is to phase 4, which is great news, including the city. The city delayed phase 3 about a week or so, but it seems like the mayor looks like announcing today, scheduled announcement that this city will move forward as well with the rest of the state. That's great news in Illinois, but elsewhere, oh boy, the Southwest and Florida cases continue to rise. Some of that has to do with increased testing, which continues, but hospitalizations are rising in areas that really had laxed or much more relaxed situations. And worldwide, this pandemic nowhere close to done. In fact, more than 183,000 new cases in the last 24 hours. It's the most ever in a day. Again, a lot of it due to testing, but Brazil's seeing spikes. We're seeing spikes in Latin, Central, and South America now too. So kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, and I'm actually really, really impressed with Illinois right now because we're 2 weeks out now from the death of George Floyd and the protests as they began. And I was really worried that 2 weeks we were going to start seeing a lot more cases or a big spike in cases because so many people were out in the streets and a lot of them weren't wearing masks and they were protesting. At least they were outside, but there was still that fear that cases would jump up.
Right. I hope we still don't see it come in the next few weeks, especially, I mean, I'm so excited about the lakefront and 606 opening because I love to run outside and I cannot wait to run on the lakefront. But I'm worried about because a couple weeks ago, months ago, it was packed, jam-packed with people. So when we get nice weather,
I think we've learned a little bit. I think when it reopened in March, a lot of us were maybe not taking this virus as more serious as we could. Since then, we've become much more acquainted with wearing masks and what this really does. We saw the giant spike and we've done such a good job. I just think that people are a little bit more wiser than they were in March. But we'll see. Maybe I'm putting too much faith in my fellow man and woman.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. All right. So as we're talking about going into the next phase, Michael Jacobson is the president and CEO of the Illinois Hotel and Lodging Association. He is joining us this morning to talk a little bit about what they are doing in terms of hotels and motels to keep people safe, as now we're all starting to think about going out on trips, even if they are just, jumping in the car. Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Let's talk a little bit about phase 4. How is that being handled in the Hotel Association?
So phase 4, hotels were always allowed to stay open. We were considered an essential business, mainly because of people that were on essential trips, whether they're having to come visit family or first responders. So we were always open, but many hotels voluntarily shut down because of the drop in business. And I think with progressing into phase 4, our hope is that we can make some modifications to phase 4 so we could start holding social events within our hotels, like weddings and other events that will really start driving the business demand to be able to justify reopening for business purposes.
Obviously, so much of hotels business relies on conventions. Those 50 people is a lot of people compared to what we had, but it's certainly not convention size. So is each hotel kind of taking a different approach in how they can at least bring some people in for gatherings in terms of business or travel in some way?
Yeah, I don't think anybody is necessarily advocating for a 50,000 person convention at McCormick Place to start on June 26th. We're focused more on those 150, 200 person gatherings. And when you look at the size of some of our ballrooms downtown, these can seat typically in a normal time 3,000 people. So that's what we're saying is we can do an event like that, implement social distancing, and do it very safely and responsibly with a whole range. We put together pages of protocols, but we could do it with more than 50 people. But I think there's a big difference between a wedding of 100 or 150 people and a convention taking place in McCormick Place.
Yeah, Michael, when I think of hotels, I think of all of those communal areas, communal breakfast, the beverages, the elevators, everything. I mean, not only in just weddings, but just walking around and being in a hotel. So what is your plan and how does your plan to attack that?
So we have a much broader plan related to actual guest stays within the hotels. And that's something that we were always proud of as an industry, even before COVID, was the level of cleanliness within our hotels. But as you can imagine, that's gone into overdrive. So there are pages and pages of guidelines that we put forth for the industry. And your stay will look very different from the minute you walk in throughout your stay to the minute you walk out. Things like a lot of the things will be missing from your room. So things like throw pillows and magazines and the coffee makers, things that people touch over and over again, those have been removed. We've implemented electrostatic sprayers in many hotels, which hospitals typically use to disinfect those rooms. We've implemented in hotels. So those are just a couple of the ways that we've really ramped up the cleaning protocols within the hotels, because it's important that guests not only feel safe, but it's important that they are safe. No hotel wants the next case of COVID happening in our hotels, and we're confident that we put together the practices to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Michael, what about, it's summer now, and a lot of the hotels were shutting down their pools. What about indoor and outdoor pools? Are they going to be allowed to open anytime soon?
Yeah, right now under the phase 3 guidelines, the phase we're currently in, swimming pools are limited to really just kind of swim team practices, exercise, kind of lap swimming. We're working to see if there's a way that we can reopen some of the pools for social gatherings. I think we'll see more under phase 4, especially because it's important to realize, for all things considered under phase 4, is that we're going to be in phase 4 for quite some time, because the only way we get to phase 5 is when we find a vaccine or treatment. So I think there's going to be several different areas where we see phase 4 change, and there's going to be different stages within the phase. So that's swimming pools are a perfect example that I think you're going to see that continue to progress and grow as we progress through phase 4.
One thing I was surprised about is how we have this image of hotels as these big companies owned by massive corporations, but many hotels are individually owned. Either they're boutique or they're just owned by an individual family man or woman. And how have they done? Like, what are the reports? Do we have any stats on how Chicago hotels have held up? Do we have mass closings? Have most been able to weather this storm? What are we looking at in terms of after this?
So you raise a great point, and people think that Marriott or Hilton or Hyatt owns all of their hotels, when they own very few, if any. Most hotels are owned by individual Illinois families based right here in Illinois. They just pay a licensing fee or a franchise fee to have the Marriott brand on their building. So these aren't mega corporations. These are some of your neighbors that happen to own the hotel down your street. And so many of our hotels in Illinois are actually considered small businesses because of that. And what you're seeing, especially in Chicago, is, again, many of them did decide to suspend their operations during COVID. You've seen a couple of them start reopening now and start rehiring in some fashion. But I think many are going to remain closed, especially the larger ones, our biggest employers, until really business travel and meetings start to pick up again, because that makes up about half of their revenue. But occupancy is still in the teens. And really, it doesn't make sense to keep your doors open if your occupancy is in the teens. So those that are reopening are much more focused on the leisure travel business. So some of the more boutique properties that do a lot better catering to leisure travelers, especially as we look at things like staycations and people within the 90-mile radius or so that might be coming to Chicago in the short term.
Michael, thank you so much. We're going to get your full screen details up on the screen so that folks can keep up with the changes as they likely are going to be happening. As you mentioned, we're going to be in phase 4 for quite some time. So if you'd like to keep up with the Hotel and Lodging Association, you can check them out on Facebook and Twitter. And of course, IllinoisHotels.org is the website. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You too.
All right.
So exciting to talk about phase 4. And I'm glad he said that, because I did forget. It is a long time that we're going to be in it. So
yeah. Yeah, we should have phase 4 memes ready to go. This is where and they can, obviously, if things change, go back to phase 3. Let's just all focus on staying in phase 4. Let the scientists do their thing, and let's stay safe, keep distance, masks, all that, but just enjoy where we are, and that's good.
Yes,
for sure.
All right, we've got a lot coming up at 11 o'clock. Can't wait for the show. Sean Gant is going to join us, kind of talking about the confluence of hip-hop and black celebrity culture and what that means for the Black Lives Matter movement. Really can't wait for that conversation.
And then from the hit show on OWN, Greenleaf, we've got Lynn Whitfield joining us to chit-chat a little bit about season 5.
Yeah, and then at 11:30, we've got the OG member from En Vogue, Terry Ellis. She'll be joining us, and she's going to be talking about her new solo song that's called Angry Black Woman, and she just released that on Juneteenth.
Great stuff. Can't wait to see everyone at 11.
Yeah, see you guys then.